Hello, welcome back to the Mobile Motorbike Mechanic channel. I'm Steve. Today we're off to Ashby de la Zouch to go and work on a Suzuki Hayabusa. We've got a valve check to do on it and possibly sort the clearances. So we'll see you when we get there. Right folks, so here we are, GSX 1300 or the Suzuki Hayabusa. Customers popped the fairings off for us already, so they're sat over here in the corner. But what we're going to do is we're going to get the seat off, the tank off, the airbox off, and then that means we can get down onto the top of the valve cover, and then we can see the business end of what this job entails. One good thing about these Hayabusas is that this one screw does both of these throttle bodies. So then you can do the one screw on the other side and it does the other two throttle bodies. So don't go looking in there for another screw. And there's various hoses and pipes and bits of stuff that you got to undo from under here. There's one at the back here, crankcase breather, and that one there. And that should, ta-da, just pull out. So we've got hose there, hose there, hose there, hose there. Electrical connector there, an electrical connector there, and a hose. So yeah, loads of hoses, two connectors, and like I say, this one screw does these two, and this one screw does these two. It's quite handy. Right, onwards. Right, so now we can do the job like this, because we can get to this is our valve cover that we need to get to, and get our bolts off. And under here is where we're going to be working, but because it's just as easy, we'll get the tank out of the way and then we can get lots of access onto this valve cover. That's one. Now the breathers, a couple of breathers on the back. So, we're going to have a problem here. So this lead is attached. Right, we'll have to cut that off and we'll get a bolt. With those two rear bolts out and the two front bolts out, we've undone the wiring connections. Right, we've still got more wiring on this. Right, that's not going to work. I don't know what's going on here. I don't understand why it won't just pull out. So this bracket that holds the tank in, bit of a pain. So what we've done is we've taken the two bolts out that hold the bracket in, these two here, and we've loosened off the hinge bolt. The hinge bolt you can't take out because it hits the frame. And the bracket you can't remove because it does double duty. So we've got to just remove that bolt there. There we go. And now we can get the tank out of the way. And once this comes up, I'll show you why you can't remove the bracket. The reason why you can't remove this bracket is because this little unit here, this little electrical component, which is a pain. So we're just popping back in for the time being. And like I say, you can't pull that bolt out all the way because it hits the frame. So you just have to ease it out. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to dive in underneath this underneath this rubber sheet, and this is your valve cover under here. So all of this lot needs to come out of the way. We don't need to worry about throttle bodies, I think, but we'll find out in a minute. Anyway, we'll get these coils out of the way. Oh, there. Some of them are a bit awkward. There we go. So we can get that lot out of the way. Now these coils, sometimes they're a bear to get out because this part can swell and the rubber can stick. Don't be tempted to put a screwdriver under here and lift them up, because if you do, you're liable to snap that off. So just a good grip, twist them as you're pulling them out, and they, like I say, they do, there you go, they do come out. And also, it's not critical, I don't believe, but I always try and lay them out in order. So number one's going to go back into number one hole. There we go. That's those four. That's those four out. A little connector here to undo. And now we can start removing this rubber cover. And finally, oh, there's a zip tie on there. Pull them off. And there's another one there. There you go. Where did the other one go? There he is. Right, it's held in the frame just here with a little, you see that? It's one of these horrible push button fittings. You see, as you turn that out, you see it's pushing back in again, so you can't put any pressure on it. You just got to turn it out very gently and then pull them out with your fingers like that. And now we've got a breather tube here which we need to disconnect. And before we go any further and start pulling rubbish out, I'm just going to cover up these throttle bodies so we don't drop anything down inside them. Right, so we've got this breather hose here that comes from the radiator that actually passes through the middle of this rubber shield. So we just need to get rid of that. So we're going to have to pop it off the radiator over here. This big hose here is the one we want to undo. Just like that. Oh. Just want to start moving it. There you go, now it started moving. You might get a little dribble of coolant out of this one. So be prepared with a cloth to catch the coolant. There we go. And then we can pass it straight back. And tuck it back on again. There we go. Right. Like I say, we did get a little dribble of coolant out of that one. But now, this is beginning to be free. Right. Okay. So there's one last bit of wiring that passes through this, goes up to the horn. So I just need to reach around the back here. Yeah, reach around. And we just need to unplug it from the horn. There we go. That's that out of the way. And now we can get that out of the way. Cool. Okay, we're getting somewhere now. So this is your valve cover, this big black thing here. And just hold that wiring down the side there. Right, so this is your valve cover held in by your 6 bolts. Boom, 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 boom. So what we're going to do is we're going to slacking off these 6 bolts. We'll give it a quick clean as well to stop any rubbish falling inside, and then we'll get that off. You're not trying to get it spotless, we're just trying to get the major bits of rubbish off it so that they're not going to fall. Like you see, there's quite a chunk of road tar there. If that ended up inside your engine, that would be bad news. So it's just lumps like that. Anything that's loose, really, just give it a little wipe. Anything that's loose will fall off, and that's what we want to get off and out of the way. Right. Okay, I think that's us about done there. So what we want to do now is undo these 6 bolts, and then we'll get this valve cover off and out of the way. The plugs are still in the motor, by the way. I haven't taken the plugs out or anything yet, because again, we don't want anything falling down the plug holes and causing us problems. Right, we've got a problem there where my tool doesn't fit. So I have to go and get an alternative. That's that one, that one, that one, and that one done. Right, I just need to do those 2. Yeah. Oh, come on. How hard can it be? Cool. That one's done up. No easy way to get onto that. Oh, there we go. God. Making me earn my money today. Okay, so just going to grab another pot so we can put different bits in different colour pots so we know where we're at with everything. So now those are all undone, we want to just have a quick check. On older bikes you might have ones at the ends as well, so just make sure. I've already read the manual on this one, so I know there's only 6. So now we need to get this cover off. This cover is going to be, it shouldn't be stuck down, but it is going to be, you know, adhered over time, so they can be a bit of a pain to get off. So yeah, that's going to be absolutely, you can see me moving the whole bike there and it's not coming off. So you might be tempted to get a screwdriver and start prising it off. Don't do that. If you damage the mating surfaces between the actual cylinder head itself and the cam cover, you're going to get a leak and you're going to have all sorts of problems. So what you need to do is just keep sort of pulling at it, pushing at it, trying to get it, you know, try and grab it as much as you can, and we'll gradually work it off. If it still won't move, like this one, get a soft blow hammer and give it a couple of taps, not hits, a couple of taps, and it will just start it to move. So can you hear the difference between that and that? That's more like a hollow sound compared to that. So we know this side's starting to move. And if I put my finger on it, I can actually feel it moving compared with that side over there. If you don't have a soft blow hammer, what you can use is a block of wood and a hammer and then hit the block of wood. But this is slowly starting to move. So, good news. Give us another couple of minutes, we should have it off. That's it moving now. So we're just going to move it back and forth to break the seal. Now you'll see why this is so sort of stuck in a minute when we get it out. But the good news is that's moving. So we just need to keep going around, moving it a bit more and a bit more and a bit more until it comes out. Right, if we look through this part of the frame here, you can see that one half, there's that half moon, that black half moon. So that's coming up and down with the rocker cover. So the other half moon of the gasket isn't moving, and it's actually stuck in the cylinder head itself. So we're just going to have to get in there and gently prise that out, and then we can remove the valve cover. So now we've just got to Jenga this bloody thing out of here, and it's, to say the least, tight. Actually, I'm just going to remove this bracket because that will give us a little bit more clearance. There we go. A little bit more clearance. I might actually have to pop the throttle cables off as well, just to give me a bit more. There, a 12, not a 10. How fucking stupid is that? So just before we have to remove these throttle cables, I'm going to mark them up as the top one and the bottom one, so we know where they're going to go back on. It's just, again, that's just going to give us that little bit more clearance to be able to get in there and sort this out. Everything is so tight. So that's one gone. And then this is your fast idle cable. It would be a choke cable if it was a carbureted bike, but it's not. So it's a fast idle cable. So if we just get rid of all that lot, there we go, we've just got a little bit more clearance now to play with. And like I say, we do have to sort of Jenga this out of here. It is a pain, but it should come. He says. Should. We ain't going. Right, we'll remove more stuff. Come on. I'm bleeding now. No, that's red rubber grease. All right, cool. I'm not bleeding. No, it's hitting the throttle bodies. Okay, we're gonna have to get the throttle bodies out. So, go and do this screw here, and the same on the other side to get the throttle bodies relaxed and off. So first things first, we need to take out this little plug out the side of the frame, and then that will allow us to put our screwdriver through and get onto that. So just go steady. There we go, there's our little plug out. And then I bet you we need a long reach screwdriver. And now, long screwdriver, we can get onto that screw there, and we can undo it. So that's the other side undone, and now it's just a question of, there we go, pop the throttle bodies off, rest them back there, and now this case should, he says, should just pull out. And like I say, these are particularly tight. They only just come out. There we go. That's it. One rocker cover removed. Pop it over there for safekeeping. So this is your gasket here, your rocker cover gasket. So we'll need to get him out, inspect him. You can reuse these. Best practice states you should replace them. But as long as they're not damaged and as long as they're still pliable and they're not plastic, they haven't turned brittle, then you can reuse them. Just got to go careful with them, getting them out. But as long as you get them out in one piece, and like I say, as long as they're still as long as they're still rubber and not plastic, which that one is, we can reuse it. Right, so we're at the business end finally. So this is the intake cam here. So this is your intake side of the engine. Clearly says in on it, and this is the exhaust side of the engine, and it says exhaust on it. What we need to do is this is a cam lobe, and we've got 2 per cylinder on the inlet. These 2 here, there's 2 here, and there's 2 here, and then you got 2 on the exhaust, 2, 2, 2. So this is a 16 valve engine, 4 cylinder. What we need to do is we need to measure the distance or the tolerance between this cam lobe and inside here is a shim bucket. Now hang on a moment, if we come back over to this one here, it's easier to see. So this is your cam lobe here, and this is your bucket. Okay, we need to measure the tolerance between those two, and you measure that with a set of these. So these are feeler gauges. So if you go to your manual on your bike, it will tell you these are all different thicknesses, these are all different, and look at them, they're pretty used. That's the reason why they're all bent out of shape. But I know for this bike, on the inlet side, the minimum is 0.08 mil. Now for our American friends, that's 0.003 of an inch, but I use mil. So that's the minimum allowed tolerance. So what we need to do is we need to set the engine to top dead center #1 piston, and then we get this feeler gauge, and we will push this feeler gauge through between, like I say, between the cam lobe and the bucket. And if we can get that through there when the engine is set at its correct position, it's not set at its correct position yet, but if we can get that through there, we're within tolerance. If we can't, then we need to write it down, check all the rest of them, and then come back and adjust those. So we need to set the engine to top dead center #1 cylinder. To do that, we need to pull these inspection plugs off. They're normally done up pretty bloody tight. Oh, there we go. That's #1 and #2. So this plug will allow us access to the end of the crank. There we go. And this plug will allow us to look at the timing marks on the crank. Onto the end of the crank, and then we're going to look inside that hole, and inside that hole there are marks. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn it around, and you see there's marks on the crank. And then we're going to move it around until I find the timing mark. So just bear with me a second. And you can hear the valves opening and closing and pistons going up and down. Ah, there we go. Right, so what we've done is we've got that timing mark in line with the little recess, the little cutout inside the case there. So now we know the engine is timed, but we don't know what it's timed to. So that's why we come up here and we look on the cam sprockets, and on the cam sprockets you've got little identifiers and little marks. So what we need to do is we need to identify and check to see if we're on top dead center number 1 cylinder. Now, to me, straight away, it looks like we're not. And the reason why it looks like we're not is because if you look along this inlet cam, these lobes on number 4 are pointing out, but the lobes on number 1 you can't see. So I think we're not at top dead center number 1 cylinder. You can see the cam and you can see the back of the lobe, but you can't actually see the lobe itself, whereas on this one you can see the lobe. So I think we're 180 degrees out, but that's just based on experience. Right, so what we're doing here is we're just slackening off, not removing, we're just slackening off the spark plugs. And the reason why we're doing that is just to make our lives a little bit easier. So when we're trying to turn the engine over to set the cams into the correct positions, we're not fighting the compression of the engine. But I'm not going to take the plugs out, because just in case we drop anything down the hole, we don't want anything ending up inside the engine. So there we go, that's all the plugs released. And now I'm also going to pop a cloth into the inlets. Now if you're doing this, be careful, because you're still going to be cycling the engine, so these inlets are going to be drawing air in. So don't go ramming things in here too tight, because if you're spinning the engine over, it can actually suck it into the engine. It's very, very unlikely, but it might happen. Anyway, so we've released the plugs. What we want to do is we want to turn this end of the crank over and set our TDC to number 1 piston. So what we're looking for is, as we turn the engine over, you can see all the valves are moving, everything's moving around, and you can hear the pistons going up and down. And what we want to do is we want to get number 1 set. So these lobes are pointing out and these lobes are pointing out. So we'll get on with that. It should be coming up onto mark any second. He says. Here we go. Right, so we've got our mark on the crank here set. Looks like we've got our mark on the cam here set and here set. We can see the lobes are pointing out, and we can see the lobes on that one are pointing that way. As a final check, we'll just lift the plug out of that hole and just check with a small screwdriver if we can feel that's the top of the piston. We're not going to bang it, I say we're just feeling it, and that is the top of the piston. So we know the piston's at the top of the stroke. We're happy that we're on number 1 cylinder, top dead center. We're going to be working on number 1 cylinder first. This is a 0.08 mil feeler gauge, so that's the minimum tolerance for this bike. And all we're going to do is we're going to follow the lobe down and then go over the top, and you can see that's coming out the back there. So we've got clearance. So that one at the minimum clearance is fine. And then we're going to come over and we're going to do the same again for the next one. And again, that one's fine. You can see it coming out the back here. So we know that those two shims, or those two valves, I should say, those two valves are within clearance. They're within tolerance. What we want to know is what those two valves are. So we're now going to go up to the next size feeler, and we'll just keep going up until we can't get our feeler gauge in there, and then we know exactly what the tolerance is. So that's a 9, that's going in. Yeah, that's nice. And that's a 9. Yeah, that's going in. So we'll go up again. The reason why we're doing this is because we want to really know where we are at with these. I think the 10 might not go. Oh no, 10's gone. 10's good. On the next one we've got is a 13, so it's a bit of a jump. We'll try a 13. Now, 13 won't go. Next one. Yeah, 13's gone on that one. So 13 won't go this side, but 13 will go that side. So we know this one is somewhere between 0.1 and 0.13. And we know that one, 13 will go. So we need to go up to the next one on that one. And it's just a question of checking and checking and checking. So next one's 15. Yeah, 15 goes. Now, the upper tolerance on these is 0.18. So if a 0.18 will go through this, no, it won't. There you go. So that one is within tolerance, and we're going to call it at 0.15. This one we know is somewhere between 10 and 13, but she's still within tolerance, so that's fine. Yeah, 13 won't go. We know a 10 will, but the range is 0.08 to 0.18. So that's within spec. That's within spec. Those two valves are okay. We now need to move on to the exhaust. So the exhaust is 0.18 is the minimum. So we get a 0.18 feeler gauge. We go in and we just do exactly the same again. Normally it's exhausts that are tight because they run hotter, so they burn more, but that 1.8 goes in there. This one, yeah, that's going in there, easy peasy. So we already know they're going to be within tolerance, but let's find out exactly what they're at. Right folks, so we've got the valve clearance information here, and as we can see on the inlet side it should be 0.08 to 0.18, and we've got 0.1 and 0.15, so we're good with both of those. And then on the exhaust it should be 0.18 to 0.28, and we've got 0.23 and 0.25, so we're good on both of those. So all four of those valve clearances are within specification. This one's a little bit low, but it's still within spec. This one you could argue, no, that's fine, 2.3, and it should be 1.8 to 2.8. Yeah, so these are fine, these are fine. That one's a little bit low, but it's still within spec. So if all of the others check out, there's no point in pulling the motor apart just to change one. So we'll advise the customer that way, but we'll carry on, we'll check all the rest of them, and we'll come back to you in a little while. Right, so we've done all of the valve clearances, we've checked all of the valve clearances, and if we have a look here, so intakes 0.8 to 0.18, so we're 10, 15, 13, 13, 13, 10, 10, 10, so we're all within tolerance there. We're on the lower end, but we're still within tolerance. And then exhaust 18 to 28 with 23, 25, 23, 25, 25, 23, 23, 20. So again, all well within tolerance there. So in this instance, we don't actually need to shim this motor. So what we're going to do is, we've had a chat with the customer already. He did say it was surging at low revs and felt a little bit weird, so that's the reason why he was getting the valve clearances checked. So we're going to say it's more than likely throttle body is going to be out of synchronization. They're definitely going to be out now because we pulled them off. So we'll get all this back together again, and he's got to go off to a dealer to get that sorted out, because on these particular bikes, the Suzuki software, you have to delete everything in the ECU, and then the bike relearns the throttle settings and what have you, which is a bit of a bugger because we can't do it. But there we go. We're going to start putting this motor back together again. First things first, we need to get this cover back on. So check to make sure you've got these two dowels. One of them was actually in the engine, on the engine side, so we've just popped that off. And all we're going to do, like I say, because this is nice and supple, we can reuse it. We're just going to check to make sure there's no gasket spooge on these half moons, because that is the only place where you want to be putting a little bit of instant gasket. And what we're going to do, we're going to line it up, and just, it does have a recess, and it just literally clips in all the way around, nice and simple. There we go. And as you can see, it's not baggy, it's not in bad condition at all, that isn't. So that's back on there, and then we've got these four ones. Again, these have got a recess in, so they just clip into place. A little I suppose it's a little bit too late for saying this, but if you're doing this and you're following the video, when you take this off, make sure these don't fall down inside the engine, because some of them do. But there we go. Right, so that's all that done. Now what we need to do is we need to put a very, very small amount of gasket glue on, literally just on these half moons here. That's all, that's it. You don't want to put any on here or on here or on these. So we're just going to pop a little bit. Ooh, way too much, way too much. That's enough for all bloody four there. And that came out a little bit too quick, that did. So we're just going to put a little bit on. And the reason why we're only putting a little bit on is you saw the struggle we had getting this off, and we don't want it spooging everywhere inside the motor. And just pull that old little bit off there. Yes, that's a lot of money, and yes, that's all you're going to use it for. Just those tiny little bits. Right, now we can get that back on. Get it back in the engine, and hopefully start putting everything back together again. And what you want to be doing is you want to be looking down the side of the motor, and you want to make sure these half moons haven't tucked in. So we've got to be looking down there, and this one's even more tricky to look at, because we're going to actually have to look at it, because of all this pipe work and everything that's in the way. We're going to have to look at it from under here. But it's looking good. Yeah, that looks good, feels good. That's sat down nicely, that has. So give it a little tap. Yep, I'm happy with that. That seems to have sat down nicely. Right. So next thing is to pop these Allen bolts in that hold it on. Now underneath these cam cap bolts you've got these rubber washers, so again keep an eye on those. If they've gone solid, replace them, but these ones are all nice. Again, good practice is to replace, but they appear to be all good, so we're not going to on this occasion. Whenever you try and do a gasket up on a flat surface like this, think of it like a piece of paper. How we just smooth out a piece of paper? You start in the middle and work your way out. So same with these, start with the middle and then go to the edges. That was the cover settling. Scared the shit out of me, I tell you. Moving on. And again, we're just checking down the sides to make sure the gasket's still looking good as we tighten everything up. Just going to pull that hose out the way to have a look behind here. Yep, he's looking good. Okay, looks like it's all settled down nicely. Now, some people will be going, torque wrench, torque wrench, torque wrench. Every time I've used the torque wrench doing these up, they snap. So I don't use the torque wrench. I do it until it sits and it feels right. And every time they snap, it's always on my own bloody bike as well. That's that back on again. We'll get the throttle bodies back on now. Just a question of remembering where everything goes. The throttle bodies should just have a nice positive click. There you go. Right, so throttle cable's back on. We did mark them top and bottom. It looks like that's rubbed off. Which is, yeah, it's rubbed off on both of them. Oh bugger. So, if you've not marked your cables and you suddenly go, oh right, which one's which? If you grab your throttle, right, that's your on, yeah? You see that's pulling it. Okay, so if you keep hold of that, see which way your throttles turn. So that is going to be your bottom one there. If we put that into the clamp, let's just double check that before we pull these out. Yep. Okay, and then we can fit the return cable. Somebody did mention on one of our videos the other day that we had a sticking throttle on a GSXR, and I didn't mention how to stop the throttle from sticking. Well, the truth is it's normally the return cable's too tight. So if you've got a sticking throttle cable, check your return cable. That would be my advice. Actually, I need to undo that one. I've got ahead of myself again because I can't get onto that one with the other cable in place. There we go. So yeah, if you've got a sticking throttle, just check the tension on your return cable. That's if you've got a return cable, that is. If it's not got two cables and it's only got one, check to make sure that all this under here is clean. But that's operating nicely. So we just put the fast idle cable in place now. We'll just check, make sure the operation of that's working correctly, which it is. Lovely job. We are now ready for the airbox. Lots and lots of tubes to go back on this airbox. Another one, there's another one there. And we've got a green plug, got a black plug that goes on that. And we should have, oh, that's just the drain, so we don't have a hose for that one. There's no hose corresponding. So we can pop him on there, get him tucked around there, fold him in there, and then it's just a question of getting it seated, which is boom, like that. So we'll do the clamps up and then he won't come off again. And I'm just going to revise that clip there because I don't like how tight that is. I don't think that was on there. I think that was just resting free there. It was just those two hoses that were on this little bracket. Right, little black screw, we forgot it. So airbox is back off again, and I forgot to put that on as well. Oops. Anyway, little black screw. Leaves are a pain to do, but a necessary evil. As we said, if it's there when we come to it, we've got to put it back. Oh, come on, you pain. There it is. And clip. He's in. Right. Now we can refit the airbox again. So airbox is back to where we were. So get this bolt in, and then we can look at refitting the tank. Right, quick final check before the tank goes on. Make sure that everything's bolted back together again. We've just got that one, and that's the tank connector there. Now we did have an extra couple of wires here. That's for the chapped. That's for one of his extra bits on one of the panels he's got. And there was that one that was connected with a zip tie on to the bracket here. Other than that, everything looks like it's back in where it should go. Good. Right. We'll grab the tank and get that fitted. That's not going to go. So you have to pull it up. Pull it up, push it down to trap my bloody fingers. Right. Okay. So now we've got to pull the whole bloody lot up. This is a pain. I'm sure I'm doing this wrong. There we go, that's got it. Okay, not even close at the minute. There we go. So at the back here, down here, we've got a couple of tubes that we need to reattach. These are just drain tubes. So they just push fit, there's no clips or anything. And we've got the main fuel hose to reattach. Now when this goes back on, you'll see there's a cutout missing out of it, and this little grey fella on the actual barb itself. So just line up the cutout with the grey thing there, and then it should just nice and easily push on. If it doesn't, like this one isn't doing so, you don't want to go breaking it. So take it off, make sure the little O-ring inside's nice and sat down properly, and try again. Awkward to film because there we go, my big sausage hands are in there. But there you go, and you just want to make sure that it can't pull off. So that's good. And now we can find the connector for the fuel pump, which is there. Fuel pump and fuel gauge. And that's that reattached. So one final check. We've got the key in the bike. So just put your hand up in case this does come off and squirts a load of fuel in your face. You can hear the fuel pump prime. That's up to pressure now. You run it a couple of times. You can actually hear the tone change. Yeah. Oh, have I turned the hazard lights on? Yeah, I have. There you go. So yeah, we've just cycled the fuel pump a couple of times just to make sure that hose is all good under pressure. So we're happy that that's all been fitted correctly. Let's say we've got a couple of hoses at the back there, and we know the fuel pump is running because we can hear it. That's good. It's just, yeah, and we've got a fuel gauge on the dash, so we know everything's connected properly. So we can drop that one back down again now. So we've just got 4 bolts to go. This fast idle cable, bit of a weird one. It goes underneath the tank there by the look of it, and there's a spacer missing. That was missing when we came to the bike. Just pop this little embellisher piece over the top. Not going to tighten that out too much because it's got that little piece missing from underneath, so we don't want to crack this bit of carbon. And finally, we got the seat to go. Before we fit the seat, we need to pop this wire back, and it was on a cable tie wrapped around there, so I'm just going to go grab a cable tie and reattach that for him. So we've just reattached these little charge cable there with a cable tie. Now we can pop the seat back on again. And that was up there somewhere, I believe. Like that. Right folks, so that's this one all checked over. Like I say, the clearances, they're on the lower side, but they're all within spec, so we're not going to bother changing them. So yeah, so it's all back together again. Let's just make sure that starts. Yep, starts them. Lovely, so that starts absolutely on the button. So yeah, that's this one all done. So remember to like, comment and subscribe, and we'll see you again on the next video.